Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I did not forget the name. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. I did not forget Tom's name. Tom, pretty good start so far, right?
Pretty good start, and the NCAA declared both of us eligible immediately, so that's great, so we can go ahead and do the podcast now.
All right, let's do that. You know who else? I don't know if you heard, who else was declared immediately eligible?
No, I haven't heard. Was there some news? Was that some sort of a transition that we just did there? That's weird.
Breaking. Yeah, so Justin Fields, the Friday news, he was declared eligible by the NCAA, in case you only listen to us and this is the only place where you get any kind of news, which thank you. So yeah, he was declared immediately eligible. The Friday news dump, I don't know, when did it happen, like 4:30 or 5 on a Friday?
Yeah,
The
about
classic,
4:30 on Friday afternoon, yeah.
Yeah, let's just slip this in there and then go home. And I don't know if this was one of those things where that needed to happen, but I understand it. And then after you see the outrage from like the Georgia fans and the Michigan fans, you can understand it some more. But overall, you know, they're like, well, let's just push this out there, and then Monday we'll have the Super Bowl to talk about, or not the Super Bowl, the AAF to talk about. People will have moved on, and they have moved on, but there are some upset people. But yes, Justin Fields immediately eligible, and Tom, I guess that means he's Ohio State starter, likely Heisman winner, national title. I don't think this is too much to put on him. Am I? And he could win 2 Heismans this year. I'll say that. What do you think?
I mean, he's got to make up for Tate Martell's 3, and if he's only going to be here 2 years because he's going to be the number 1 starting quarterback in the NFL next year, or sorry, in 2 years, then if he's got to win 3 Heismans in 2 years to keep up with Tate Martell, then yeah, I would recommend winning 2 this year because that really takes the pressure off for 2020 then.
Tom, I don't want to say the T word anymore. He turned his back on us. He had no admiration for us as we had for him. I'm not saying my heart is broken. It's a little cracked. So let's just the former quarterback, the quarterback who shall not be named. Perhaps we can go with that. Can we do that?
The artist formerly known as Tathan.
Let's do that. So yeah, we talked to Ryan Day last week, and he was talking, and you wrote about it as well, when Tate told us at the Rose Bowl that there is no way somebody's going to come in off of the streets and learn this offense in the course of one off season. And Matthew Baldwin, after maybe the Northwestern game or the Rose Bowl, was like, yeah, it's really difficult. But Ryan Day was like, well, the gist of it, basically, how I took it was, we'll give them what they can handle, and we'll go from there. And I saw some, after your piece, some people were commenting like, we can't just go with a limited offense. We have to go with the quarterback who gives Ohio State the best opportunity to use the entire offense. But when you see what Justin Fields can do, and you see the breadth of Ryan Day's offense, even if it's just 80%, I don't really think that's limiting it.
Well, I guess the question is, when you say the whole offense, what does the whole offense actually encompass? Because if Justin Fields is not able to run as many different passing concepts as Matthew Baldwin does, but Justin Fields, being a better runner than Matthew Baldwin, is able to run more zone read type concepts and things based off of his running ability, then is one of them running the whole offense, or is neither of them really running the whole offense?
Yeah, you go back to the 2014 quarterback competition behind Braxton. It was JT eventually won it because he moved the ball better. That's what Tom Herman said. That's what Urban Meyer said. When it came down to it, however he did it, he moved the ball better. And you look at the different ways that Justin Fields can do that and how Matthew Baldwin can do that. I think, like you said, I would expect Matthew Baldwin to have a better understanding of the offense because he'll have been in it a year longer. But if what Justin Fields understands isn't as great as what Matthew Baldwin understands, but he's still moving the ball better, then you go with the guy who puts the most points on the board, who moves the ball the most. And I don't see either one of them as necessarily holding the offense back based on where they will be in their levels of understanding, because I have a lot of respect for Ryan Day, also Mike Yurcich, what they do, what he does. I don't. One of the things Day, I think, pretty much alluded to is like they're not going to put too much on them that they can't handle. And I still expect them to put enough on them to where this is the best offense in the Big Ten. And the quarterbacks will be capable of that.
Yeah, I think that Ryan Day, I mean, this has literally been Ryan Day's job for years. Even before he was the head coach, he was the one in charge of making sure the quarterbacks were prepared to play at an Ohio State level. And before that, he was the one in charge of making the quarterbacks were prepared to play in the NFL. This is literally what he does for a living. So I think you should probably have a reasonable amount of faith that Ryan Day can figure out a way to adjust to what, the individual skills of Matthew Baldwin and the individual skills of Justin Fields and their grasp of the offense at a certain point of the season. And Matthew Baldwin, the offense they run, if they go with Matthew Baldwin, okay, Matthew Baldwin has had a full year in the system. They're going to be implementing stuff throughout the year they're not going to be running the exact same thing week 1 as they do in week 12. Right. So, I think there's this, idea that, he knows everything now. And so therefore that gives him a huge edge. And he knows more certainly at this point than Justin Fields does, having been in the system for a full year, and Fields having been here for whatever it is, 6 weeks now. So there's certainly an advantage there that will probably shrink a decent amount throughout the course of the spring as Fields has a chance to kind of work with the ones, presumably at least a decent amount in the spring, and spend time with Mike Yurcich, spend time with Ryan Day, and kind of get the offense figured out.
I think, I'll say this right now, no matter who wins the job, I am expecting the second best individual season for a quarterback in Ohio State history this year. Do you agree with that? Do you think that's a little too, it's not outlandish, but is it too optimistic? I just expect something better than JT Barrett, but short of Dwayne Haskins.
Are we talking about statistically better, or are we just talking about aesthetically pleasing and general eye test results?
Yes.
I mean, I think that if you're going the general eye test results, I think there's a decent possibility you end up there. Statistically, yeah, maybe. I mean, that's entirely possible. I think that you have a better chance of having a more holistic quarterback experience if you have Justin Fields in there, as compared to some of the JT Barrett things. I think Justin Fields is not necessarily a Dwayne Haskins level passer, but he's probably a better than JT Barrett level passer. And he's probably a little more elusive and speedier on the ground than JT Barrett was. So within those confines, yeah, I think you have a pretty good chance of having a more pleasing quarterback experience than you ever had before the start of the 2018 season.
When we talked about Dwayne Haskins and what he was going to do last year, one of the areas that we wanted to see was how does he do in November and December when the weather gets worse and bad, and not that they're outside in December, but as the weather turns, because we saw under Braxton and JT, they dropped off of a cliff. Dwayne did not do that. I think both Justin Fields and Matthew Baldwin are more well-equipped to handle the November weather because they have better arms than JT. And I think Fields can run it as well. He won't run it as much. Baldwin can run it better than Dwayne, unless you ask Stephen A. Smith. But I think what they can both do will last for 13 or 14 games better than JT would for his 13 or 14 games. That's why I expect them to be better numbers-wise and also to look better aesthetically in November. And so although, I have these high expectations, and there were times last year where they were having trouble figuring out what to do with Dwayne Haskins. Do we put that on Urban? Do you put that on Ryan Day, where you've got Dwayne Haskins, but you still can't run the ball? How is that possible when you have this focus on this passing game, and it should make it easier to run the ball, but it doesn't? So is there some doubt about Ryan Day there? I don't really have much doubt about Ryan Day, and we've seen what Oklahoma State's offense can do. So I'm expecting big things from either guy. And if the offense has to be simplified, I don't think that's a huge thing, because there is talent at both quarterback. There's talent at receivers. There's talent at running back. You don't have to be the most complicated thing. When you look at the read option or the RPO is basically it's one read. It doesn't have to be that complicated. Offense doesn't have to be that complicated. Defenses get complicated when you have all of these different factors. Offensively, we've seen with the defense where they're going to simplify things. In 2014, when Chris Ash brought his defense in, they had to start out very simple, and then they got a little bit more complicated as the defense grew, and we'll see that with Justin Fields. He'll have more added onto him, but I don't think simplifying things is a bad thing, because if you can do simple really, really well, then you should still have success. And you're still spreading the ball out. You're still getting the ball to JK, to DeMario, to Chris Olave, to Austin Mack. I don't think simpler, and I don't want to use dumbed down, which a lot of people have. I don't think that is a bad thing, especially initially, to build up the confidence, to build up get the feel for the offense, and then to just continue to add on to it. That's why I think it's going to be another very big year offensively.
Yeah, I think last year was obviously, pretty objectively a big year offensively. And in the middle of the year, they had to simplify the offense. They basically took the RPOs out of the offense because they were just not working with the personnel that they had in there for whatever reason you want to ascribe them to. So if they're able to add that back in this year, because like you said, it's not a complicated read for the quarterback, and the quarterback was not the reason the RPOs did not last in that offense. The offensive line was pretty openly discussed as the reason that they did not continue to run RPOs after the middle of the season at nearly the rate that they did at the beginning of the year. 4 of the 5 offensive linemen from last year are now gone. So for whatever reason it didn't work with the offensive line last year, you've got a pretty good chance, you've got an 80% chance that if it was 1 or 2 of those guys, that they have been replaced and there will be new guys, and you'll have a chance to run RPOs in 2019. So even if you're simplifying other elements of your offense, if you're able to add that back in, that gives you another level of complexity that you didn't have in 2018.
You mentioned the offensive line. On Tuesday, I wrote, continuing the series on how Ohio State is going to replace their departed starters. And I wrote about Isaiah Prince, and the overwhelming response on Twitter was basically LOL. Like there's this idea that Isaiah Prince is basically trash. He's going to be easily replaced. He's a 3-year starter. His first team All Big Ten guy last year. I had probably 8 or 9 false starts. And so that is where, a lot of the disdain, or I don't want to say disdain, but the disregard for him comes from. Also, the sophomore season will never be forgotten, no matter how well he plays. But I don't think it's going to be that easy of you just plug somebody in and somebody's automatically going to be better than him. But in terms of the RPO, I've said this before, that I believe this offensive line will be better. And I know I just said, something may not click with the right tackle replacing Isaiah Prince. Don't get too excited, but I think all 4 of these guys coming in, whoever they are, I didn't care for the demeanor and the attitude last year. And I'm expecting a much more, violent, hungry group. And we'll talk about the offensive line maybe next week. when we talk about the offensive line and defensive line, but I expect them to be more, I'll say, capable, multiple, because losing that RPO stuff, those are easy yards. Just watch some Big 12 football and you'll see all kinds of easy yards with the RPO. And if they could get that back, then that makes things, then you don't have to get too complicated offensively, and that makes things easy on the quarterback, whether it's Justin Fields or Matthew Baldwin. So I don't know, Tom, we'll talk about the offensive line later on, next week maybe, but are you expecting a better offensive line? Yes or no? Like right now, do you think they'll be better as a group, more capable of providing a running game as well?
Yes.
I shouldn't have said just yes or no. I said feel free to expand, but we're just going to do yes or no from now on.
I think that you have a pretty good chance of seeing a better push up front on run plays. There was a lot of stuff in that run game last year that just did not look like an Ohio State run game. And part of that is probably, you can ascribe it to the lack of quarterback running during the bulk of the season, especially when the offense really kind of bogged down and couldn't run the ball. But you had individual games like the Oregon State game where they ran the ball. I don't remember what Mike Weber ended up with against Oregon State. It was 175 yards or something like that. And then you went a month with them just being able to run 2.9 yards per carry, 3 yards per carry, 2.7 yards per carry. Like it was like unfathomably bad. And there's just basically no possible way it is that bad again. Like there's too much talent on this team. This is not like a Florida State situation where there's just huge gaping holes in the offensive line. Like there is talent there. They have got Wyatt Davis is a 5-star recruit. Nick Petit Frere is a 5-star recruit. Josh Myers was a 5-star recruit at one point. I think ended up as a high 4-star. I mean, and that's potentially 60% of your offensive line. You have Thayer Munford coming back as a second-year starter at left tackle. And then you have one other spot on the line to fill. And they have plenty of guys who, Brandon Bowen was a starter a couple of years ago, for example. Like there's a bunch of guys that could fill in that spot who have the pedigree that suggests, yes, of course they can play at this level, even if it is a little rocky at the beginning of the year because you're replacing 4 offensive line starters. By the end of the year, it's going to look significantly better than it did for most of 2018.
I also think it's a more talented group. You look last year, Demetrius Knox and Malcolm Pridgeon, they had really no competition. There was nobody pushing them, and I think there's more people this year, and guys are older, a year older, so they're better equipped to handle the position. And it would be interesting to see what would happen if Knox and Pridgeon were 5th-year guys this year, and how they would they be able to keep their jobs. I would be surprised if they would. Speaking of the offensive line, there's some news out that Kevin Woidke, walk-on, basically a left tackle, I think is where he spent most of his time, walk-on offensive tackle, was awarded a scholarship, which, Tom, puts them at 86, I believe, now. And we had talked about, they were at 85 after signing day with DeJuan Jones and Enoch Vamahi, and we knew that if they were going to bring in Jonah Jackson or the Parker Braun as grad transfers, they were going to be over that. And even Ryan Day talked about there are still some guys out there, even at 85. Do we think this giving a scholarship to Woidke is because they're not going to get either or both of those guys? Is it maybe it's a temporary thing? I don't think that's the case. But also, they wouldn't give a scholarship to a walk-on to put them over. So somebody else is leaving. We don't know who it is yet. We probably don't need to speculate, but they're not going to hand that out and make Woidke 86.
They're not going to intentionally put themselves over, especially with as openly and carefully as Ryan Day was talking about those numbers last week. He's keenly aware of it. He's willing to talk about it openly. So, this is not an area where they're probably going to be setting themselves up for, scholarship. Boy, this is hard to say. Why did I decide that the phrase scholarship shenanigans was a good thing to try and say on a podcast? It is not a good thing to try and say on a podcast. But now I said it, so now I don't ever have to say it again. Well, hi, I'm Tom. Welcome to our new podcast, Scholarship Shenanigans. Tony,
hey,
what do you think of the new name?
I don't care for it.
I think that I would not read too much into it in terms of big picture, like the fact that they are giving a scholarship to Boyd Key definitely means that they're not going to get Jonah Jackson or anything like that, or they're definitely not in the market for a quarterback or something like that. You have to expect multiple transfers after spring ball. And like you said, we don't want to speculate on names, and that's fine. There is a profile for a type of player that tends to transfer after spring ball. Last year, Ohio State had a couple offensive linemen announce that they were transferring in January before spring ball, and that did not happen this year. They had Tate Martell and Keandre Jones. So, but even with those two guys transferring last year before spring ball, they had 5 guys leave from the spring game roster after the spring game. So that was Joe Burrow, Wayne Davis, a safety, Antonio Williams, a running back, Malik Barrow, a defensive tackle who went on medical hardship, and Matt Burrell, an offensive lineman. So that was 5 guys last year who left after the spring game. Even if you add Boyd Key, they get you to 86. Add one of the potential grad transfer offensive linemen, whether it's Parker Braun or Jonah Jackson. Okay, that's 87. Add one of the quarterbacks that they've talked about. That gets you to 88. You still would have 3 players transferring at the end of spring ball, almost certainly. I can't remember the last time they had a year when they didn't have multiple transfers after the spring game. So I think that's probably a pretty safe bet, but there's a decent chance that, like you said, someone has already told Ryan Day that they're planning on leaving, and he's accounting for the scholarship that way.
I would expect more than one player probably already, because you don't want to use that last spot. Not that it is the last spot, but it's the last spot right now. Maybe you would want to save that for the 4th quarterback, I would think. And sure, it's nice to honor and reward a guy who's been around forever, and Kevin Woidke, who is always, he's right there with the scholarship players working just like they do. And we've seen him for years now. And a lot of times he's with the twos because there's generally injuries, and he's always seemingly always healthy. So we see him a lot. But I don't think they would want to use that 4th spot or fill up a spot where that 4th quarterback could have gone. But he's been around long enough to know, even if a couple of guys, even if they haven't had any communication with people, he's communicating with players, and he'll be telling them where they stand. And once you get bypassed by a younger guy, and if you're an older guy, and there's the graduate transfer now, I know coaches will complain about it, but I think they're all, when it works for you, you're thankful, and it gets guys out of here that you don't have to worry about anymore, and it allows you to bring guys in. I think there's a net positive for coaches, and you don't have to worry about there not being enough room. There's never been an Ohio State season where they kicked off with 86 guys, and I don't think Ryan Day will be his first year, Tom, as head coach. And he's going to set a record for most scholarship players in the modern era with 86, and probably have to forfeit that game. I don't know the exact punishment for doing it, because it's never happened. The NCAA is probably like, crap. Now we have to figure out a punishment. We put this rule in place. Nobody's ever broken it. And we never thought we'd have to do this. I don't know. What do we do? What's the proper punishment? I guess maybe make Michigan State can't go to a bowl game now because Ohio State has cheated. Something like that. Something, like they would do in the ACC. Something fair.
Rutgers gets a bowl ban. That's the safest penalty, I think.
That's why you bring Rutgers on. They're the scapegoat for the entire league. They take one for the team. They're just there. It's like a wingman for NCAA infractions.
Jim Delaney's Galaxy Brain editions of Rutgers and Maryland have finally paid off.
So, yeah, congratulations to the Big Ten on that very good idea by Jim Delaney. The footprint of the whole Big Ten, the reason for Jim Delaney doing that doesn't really matter to Ohio State, because now that Ryan Day is in charge, the footprint is Ohio, right? Just Ohio. And I think that's going to make a lot of people happy. And it's not really just Ohio, but the 2021, what I wanted to talk about, the 2021 class, which is a year out, 2 years out, really. It's a year out from being in the mainstream, but it's 2 years out from signing. Ryan Day has already offered 5 Ohioans from the 2021 class, and there's 2 others that he hasn't offered who are in the top 100 of the 24/7 composite. Not that there's a composite yet, because I think only 24/7 has their rankings out, and only a top 100. But 2 of the guys in there don't have offers yet. One is a running back from Perry, Ohio, Jalen Anderson, I believe. The other is A.J. Kirk, a safety from Dublin Kaufman, who happens to be the younger brother of Mike Doss. A.J. Kirk, I believe, is like a 5-star, number 28 player in the nation. And Tom, they've already offered, and Malik Hooker's brother is already on the roster. So the least they could do is offer Mike Doss's little brother. It's driving me crazy. You don't offer this guy yet. I don't care if it's grades. I don't care if he's 32 years old. I don't care if he's had 4 years in the NFL. You got to offer this guy. It's Mike Doss's little brother.
I have a feeling that an offer will come at some point, and I don't think there's a ton of reason to be concerned that offer will not be accepted out of some kind of anger over when that offer was proffered. Put it that way, because he is Mike Doss's younger brother, but his parents, I believe, have both passed away, because he's like living with Mike Doss now. Mike Doss is basically his guardian at this point, I believe. And so I have a feeling that if Mike Doss has any input at all in the process, and he likely will, Mike Doss will probably be guiding him in a certain direction, would be my guess. He also, I've been told that he and Jack Sawyer, who is the defensive end from Pickerington, A.J. Kirk and Jack Sawyer are also pretty decent friends. So if Jack Sawyer has any input, I think where Jack Sawyer is going to be guiding A.J. Kirk. So I wouldn't be too concerned about A.J. Kirk just yet. He has offers from, I think it was Michigan and Notre Dame. I forgot to look it up, but I think he had offers from a couple pretty significant Midwestern schools already. I would not expect there to be a huge lag between when there's an offer and when that offer would be accepted by A.J. Kirk, would be my guess. And Jalen Anderson, the other guy you mentioned, he's a little bit in a different spot because he's a top 100 guy, but he right now does not have any Division I offers. And I don't know whether that's a grades thing or something else, or if it's just it's 2021. There's some time before anyone in that class can sign. So if no one else is offered, Ohio State is probably not in a huge rush to offer. If you start seeing other Big Ten teams offer him and Ohio State doesn't offer him, then maybe you can kind of raise an eyebrow at that. But right now, I wouldn't read too much into that.
Another name in that class is Lorenzo Styles Jr., who plays at Pickerington Central. I would like, if he does eventually become a Buckeye, I think he likes Notre Dame quite a bit. He's been offered, but it would be good. If Lorenzo Styles Jr. comes to Ohio State as a wide receiver, I believe, or a corner, probably a wide receiver, if he would wear his dad's number, which was 90, I believe, and it would just be good to see a wide receiver at Ohio State wearing the number 90. who isn't a walk-on the scout team getting murdered by, the starters on defense. So, Tom, what are the chances a top flight, high 4-star wide receiver in college football would ever wear 90, even if it's their dad's number?
Probably not great, but I'm going to guess that the odds of that are better than a top flight cornerback wearing number 90. Like, that would really look weird. Like 90 would be like weird on a wide receiver, but 90 on a corner would be, that would be like the exact opposite of when you have like defensive tackles wearing number 1. Like that would be really,
maybe that's the thing.
I'm kind of rooting for him to sign with Ohio State, wear number 90 and play corner. Like a lockdown corner wearing number 90 would really be pretty spectacular.
Damon Arnett was in 46 in spring. The assumption was, there was some sort of punishment. So just imagine, like, you've got Lorenzo Styles Jr., his first camp at Ohio State. He's wearing 90. And say Damon Arnett stops by for a visit and he sees number 90 in the cornerbacks, and he's probably thinking, damn, what did you do? You get stuck with 90. You must have done something. That's almost twice as bad as being stuck with 46, like mathematically. So just imagine, it's like, wow, you didn't even get kicked off the team. That's, you must be pretty good. So we'll see if it happens. But Styles is one of 5 guys, like I said, who from Ohio in 2021 who has been offered, and we mentioned the 2 who haven't. Ryan Day said on signing day that, yeah, they're going to be aggressive in Ohio. They want to, keep that fence around. And Urban Meyer said in the past, and Ryan Day has said this as well, where although Urban Meyer, this is his stance, basically, like, you have to be careful offering Ohio kids too soon, because if you're not sure you want them, they may accept the offer. Now, when you're out of state and you offer somebody, that's just saying, hey, we're interested. That was Urban Meyer's basic, like, that's just how the game is played. You offer a kid from Florida knowing that they're not going to commit, but it keeps you in the game, and then you can decide as you go on whether or not that's a committable offer. If you offer a kid from Ohio in any class, you better be ready to accept that that commitment. And Ryan Day seemed to have no problem with that, and they will be more aggressive. And the feeling that I got, Tom, was if they're on the fence about a kid from Ohio, I think they're okay with going over the fence and offering. And I don't know if that's maybe just how I viewed it, but if you're going to be more aggressive, you got to hop a couple of fences.
It seems like they are starting to hop those fences a little bit more. I mean, they offered a 3-star lineman in the 2020 class, Jacob James, who accepted immediately. Immediately, like that day, that hour, accepted the scholarship offer. And they just offered a 2021 lineman, Ben Christman from Revere. It's another one where he's not rated as, this is not like Paris Johnson, who's the number 1 tackle in the country and a top 10 player overall, regardless of position. These are not guys who are, Jacob James, I think, was a 3-star recruit, and Ben Christman is not among the top 100 guys rated in the 2021 class. So, he may end up a 4-star or better prospect, but he's not in the kind of very preliminary list right now. But I think they like what they see out of those guys. You have to have a reasonable degree of confidence. You don't have to be 100% absolutely certain that a guy is going to be able to be a immediate contributor for you or anything. But I think they have to have a reasonable degree of confidence that these guys are going to be contributors for Ohio State at some point. And I think what you may be seeing is a reflection of they've had some bad misses on offensive line in recent years. They've missed out on, I think, 5 or 6 4-star players, 4-star offensive line recruits in the state in the last 5 years. And that adds up. And back in December, Ryan Day was asked about that at the early signing day and said, yeah, we're aware of that and we're addressing that. And at the time, everyone kind of went, ooh, Greg Stidwara is getting fired. And then they didn't fire Greg Stidwara. They kept him around. And it looks like the way he meant that was they're recognizing that there was perhaps a flaw in their scholarship offering process in the past, and they have adjusted that to try and keep more of those guys in state. Because, if you just took the top 3 offensive linemen in the state of Ohio and then just picked 1 or 2 guys to chase nationally, so you take your top 3 Ohio kids and then you go after your Nicholas Petit Frere or whoever the Nicholas Petit Frere of that year is, you would probably have a pretty good, pretty deep offensive line. Just because the state of Ohio, that is a position where the state of Ohio generally produces pretty good talent, it seems like.
And for all of the times Urban Meyer says, we've done a study on that or we'll need to do a study on that, it's surprising that there wasn't a study done on that where, maybe Pat Elflein doesn't look like somebody you'd want, but after 2 years in the system, and we all know Ohio kids develop later than maybe some other kids because they don't have spring football and, they've got, farming to do. And so you get these Ohio kids and maybe it takes them a year or two, but that's offensive line as well. That takes time for these guys to develop. So yeah, it seems like and he even said it, the question from the December signing day about being asked about the Ohio offensive linemen. It said, it is a concerted effort that they have. And I think it's one that it's not always going to hit because that's not how things go. But if in 13 years, when Ryan Day finally retires, we look back at the study of his offensive line, I think you'd find that's going to continue. If you just take the top 3 or 4, you're going to be okay. And it seems like, what? They're like, let's just start this now. Let's get this process going. The facts bear it out, and we'll rely on that to push us forward. Now, if there's nobody there, then you're not just going to offer guys because, 2012 says or 2018 says. It's like, well, they still have to be like if a guy can play at Minnesota or Michigan State and he's from Ohio, maybe like we said, you hop that fence and you offer him. But this is something that fans have wanted. It's something that Ryan Day has said they're going to do. And now it's not just lip service, as we're seeing with the offers from the 2020 guys and the 2021 guys, particularly on the offensive line. So I think that should make people a little bit happier. Anything else on that, Tom?
I'm just looking through past classes. Like I just brought that up sort of extemporaneously and then thought, I wonder if that's actually true. And I went back and looked, and it's like, yeah, there's for most classes that's true. There are classes where that would not have worked out particularly well in the past, but I think that's probably in general probably not too far off as a rule of thumb.
Yeah, it's better than getting like guys from Michigan every year or getting guys from Wisconsin every year. Come on, it's Ohio, all right? It's the heart of it all, and that starts on the offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, like 2 years ago, the top 3 would have been Josh Myers and Thayer Munford and Matt Bockhorst, who ended up going to Clemson, which Clemson's doing okay. A couple of years before, the year before that, I think it was Liam Eichenberg and Tommy Kramer, both of whom went to Notre Dame. Like Notre Dame's doing okay. So like these are all guys who are going. You're not stealing recruits away from MAC schools too often if you're taking the top 3 Ohio kids.
Yeah. One of the other topics that I wanted to touch on that we talked to like the players last week, the early enrollees, and it was about something that Noah Potter talked about, the defensive end from Mentor, on the workouts that Ohio State is doing now. They've started them, and it's really tough, and they have a period called like the Michigan work or the Team Up North period. Basically, I think it's what it's called in practice. I'm not sure exactly what it is in workouts, if it's the Team Up North drill or whatever, but there's just always something going on about Michigan. And I think one of the things, Team Up North drills, somebody said it's like however many days it is until Michigan, that's the number of reps, and they were doing some ab reps, and it's, what is Michigan now, like 270 some days, I don't know, 60 days. It's on our website. I mean, we could look, but so you're doing that many reps of something. It's a lot, like doing stair steps, 270 is a lot. So these are the Michigan fight song is going on through all of this. And so Noah Potter relays this story of talking to Greg Madison. And, Madison said it's going to take some time to get used to this. But then this is Noah Potter's words. He questioned why they take the rivalry so seriously. And then Coach Mick told him it's the game. And basically Noah Potter's like, this is why Ohio State beats Michigan. It's all the time. It's every day. And it was just interesting to get that perspective from Greg Madison, like almost like why do you guys care? And then you've got a guy saying, like, why do you guys care? And then you look at like the one-loss record since 2001, and they match up exactly to somebody wondering why you care, winning 2 games in an 18-year span, 17-year span, 18-year span, and the other team winning 16, and you're wondering why that team that has won 16, why do you guys care so much? And I guess I would tell Greg Madison because it works.
I don't understand how Greg Madison didn't understand this before he came down to Columbus. Like, this is not like a secret that Ohio State focuses on Michigan year round. I mean, the week of the Rose Bowl, Urban Meyer talked about the fact that they think about Michigan literally every day of the year. And he talked about the fact that they were studying Michigan in the week leading up to the Rose Bowl because they think about Michigan every day of the year. This is something that I've written about. So, like, this is not a secret. So you look at the crossed out M's on the campus signs and all that. And the all the traditions that are specific to that week. And I don't understand how he didn't understand that. But why would you question how they're approaching this? Because the results have been pretty darn good for the last literally generation of college football players. Like, it has been 18 years, which is like a generation, and Ohio State is 16-2. That's I wouldn't question anything.
It's like you said, it's shocking, it's surprising that he is not aware of this, or not aware, just how taken aback he was. But I guess it's good to get it out of his system now and to learn and to be inundated with all of this, anti-Michigan energy, and to get him ready to lead his defense against Michigan. You wonder if he's going to have the right, it's silly, like, to say, like, does he have the right mentality? It's like, well, yeah, he's going to be fine. Can he be as militant as Ohio State likes? This is a brand new defensive staff. Larry Johnson had to learn, so although, he certainly grew up, quote unquote, he was at Penn State and hated Michigan just fine. You come to Ohio State and then you learn to have new enemies, and that's life in coaching. Tom, I'm just concerned. I don't think Greg Madison is the guy to lead the troops if he doesn't understand that it's Michigan 365 days a year. Even at Michigan, it's not Michigan 365 days a year. 2 weeks, it's the Pope. Another week, it's, the president of, Canada. I don't know if they have one, but it's, you're visiting all these European countries like Canada. But it's, it's not
one week it's geography. There's lots of stuff they learn up there that we don't focus on down here, I guess.
Ohio State is more focused on Michigan than Michigan is, it seems.
I guess my main takeaway, the first one, is maybe don't have Greg Madison replace Earl Bruce as the old guy who gives the fiery speech during Michigan week.
Why do you guys care so much?
Yeah. Gosh, what's wrong with you guys? The second thing, when I read that after I stopped laughing, the second thing I thought was, what else is he baffled by in Columbus and the way Ohio State? Well, you guys, your head coach doesn't need to be plugged into the wall to recharge every 12 hours. Like, what? I don't. Your coach can pass the Turing test. What? I've never heard of such a thing.
Why are your hamburgers square?
Wait, You can win bowl games? Whoa. Nobody. Indianapolis? I've never heard of such a place. Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff he's going to have to learn.
Yeah. It's just a whole new world for him. He's going to be so happy.
What is that crystal football-shaped trophy you have there? I'm not familiar with this at all. Yeah, it's
is that antique?
It's going to be a brave new world for Greg Madison this year.
Yeah, like there's modern stuff, there's antique stuff, there's all sorts of different trophies and whatnot. It's not just all antiques like at Michigan, where it's all covered with dust and Fielding has hung his whatever on this now. So there's actually some modern looking things at Ohio State, which I'm sure it'll be great for him to check out the lobby there at the WAC and see all of those trophies and see what modern medals are capable of.
How do you guys have high definition highlights of championship wins? Is this witch? Are you a witch? I don't understand.
Yeah, like if they're showing highlights of Michigan, they have to have like the player name underneath the player, like this Charles Woodson, because you can't tell. You can't tell in 1997 standard definition. It just looks like, some little blur. It's like, no, we assure you this is Charles Woodson and this is a real game. This is how it was back then, but it can be that way again. And Michigan players are thinking like, it better not be that way. I need, like you said, high definition. I can't, my family needs to be able to see me and tell that that's me and see a number. But so this is Al Washington. He's familiar. He's been to Boston College. He knows like a modern program, what that looks like. Greg Madison, this is going to be fun for him. It's going to be a lot. And I'm sure he will get studied up. How Justin Fields and Mike Yurcich are learning the offense together. Greg Madison can learn, what the new trophies look like, what the conference title, what all of that looks like. And he's probably going to get a trip to Indianapolis soon, which is, that's a big deal. That's why you come to Ohio State, so you can go to Indianapolis.
What Ohio State football, the tradition, the people, the excellence, the St. Elmo's cocktail sauce. Really, that's the four pillars of the Ohio State football program.
Easy access to the highway in Indianapolis. We were going to, let's see, do we want to go to listener questions now? I think let's just go to listener questions. What do you say?
We can if you'd like to.
Yeah, let's do that. Unless you had any other, if you want to riff on anything else with Greg Madison, because I was enjoying that.
No, I think I'm out for now, but I'm sure we'll come up with more later. Don't worry. I'm sure this will not be the last time we talk about Greg Madison on this podcast. First one from at D Gribble_Kurt. With Justin Fields coming to Ohio State, he seems to be the favorite to earn the starting job. Do you see Matthew Baldwin as a threat or a dark horse that everyone is overlooking?
Yeah, Tom, I definitely think he's being overlooked. Matthew Baldwin, I think he's going to be a threat because I assume they're going to get half of the snaps. Well, they'll get like 45 and Chugs will get 10, or maybe they'll get 47 and a half and Chugs will get 5. But I'm expecting a full-fledged quarterback battle, and so you need both guys in there. And I don't think there would be a quarterback battle if they thought one guy was clearly superior above the other. So yeah, I don't know. The easy money, the smart money is on Justin Fields, but I'm not going to discount Matthew Baldwin at all right now. You?
No, I think that it would be pretty foolish to just completely write off the competition because, first of all, it's going to be a competition. No one has been guaranteed a starting job. That's just not how they do things at Ohio State. And there are questions about both guys, and they're very different questions. Fields, I think, physically, you kind of have a sense for what you're going to get for him, but, we talked at the beginning of the show about, picking up the offense and how quickly that'll happen. And with Baldwin, he's been at Ohio State for a year. We have never seen him live in a game or a practice because he missed spring ball last year with a knee injury. He was hurt for, kind of getting back up to 100% during the course of the season. He never played in a game. I think we went into the year assuming, like, okay, during some of these games against Indiana or Minnesota or Tulane or whoever, you'll get to see him, in that 4-game sample, so you can kind of at least get a sense for what he can do. And whether it was the injuries at the beginning of the year or closer than expected games at the end of the year, we didn't see that at all. So he has not stepped on a field and taken a meaningful snap yet. So there's not enough information on either of them in kind of different areas to, I think, make a definite decision about what's going to happen. I think, like you said, I think Fields is probably the favorite, but there's 15 spring practices, 15 summer practices, a whole lot of off-season throwing and all that kind of stuff that's going to happen between now and when the first-team quarterback actually matters.
Yeah, but the first practice will be like March 6th, the Tuesday. They practice for, if I recall, like one practice and then second practice is Thursday. Then they're off for like 2 weeks for spring break generally. Are you prepared after seeing whatever we get to see in that first practice? Are you prepared to declare a leader?
I think it would be irresponsible of us as writers to not declare a leader in terms of both fan interest and page views. I think that is definitely in our best interest and in everyone's best interest. So, while it is certainly foolish to write one person off right now, I think once we have that 15 minutes of access to watch hamstring stretches and light jogging drills, I think at that point it will be, I don't want to say an absolute lock, but I think we'll have a pretty good sense where this thing is headed after that.
100%.
All right, next one from @SJB36. Have you guys discussed the effect the AAF may have on college football? No, we have not. Next question. Or did you want us to answer that?
Oh, come on.
I mean, we can. We can. I mean, I'm answering the question that was asked. So
yeah. Next week, if you'd like us to talk about it, ask that question. No. Let's not be those people. We both watched some of it this past week. I saw you at least tweet about it. I watched some of it. And I was wondering about that. Now, I could not find, Tom, I don't know if you did your research. I know you did some, but yes, I couldn't find an age limit or like, I know initially they were like, well, you're not going to be able to come straight out of high school. Now the salaries, it's like a $250,000 3-year deal for everybody. That's like $83,000 a year, non-guaranteed. That's the standard contract for every player. And it's pretty good money for like 3 or 4 months of work plus health care. But I don't know that there's any quicker, it's not like the G League where you can go straight out of high school. Were you able to find an age limit?
Yes, they are using the same rules as the NFL is, according to what I read. So you've got to be 3 years out of high school. So it's not an age, but it's a number of years out of high school. So it's the same exact rules as the NFL. So that is the area that would be a significant impact because if you are old enough to remember the USFL in the 1980s, that was where the USFL was like a game changer because Herschel Walker played 3 seasons at Georgia. And at that time, the NFL made you play 4 years of college. You could not come out after 3 years. And the USFL cut a deal with Herschel Walker where he came out after 3 years to play for the New Jersey Generals. And that completely changed everything because the USFL was kind of a joke to start with. And then all of a sudden they sign one of the greatest college football players of all time from a very famous program that was winning national championships around that time. And so that was a real game changer. That is the point at which the AAC, I think, the AAF would be a real game changer for college. Mm-hmm. They're not there yet. That's not the rule they're going with. I think it could change it a little bit with now there's a little bit more of a fallback if you are an undrafted free agent or you get cut from an NFL team. There's a little bit more of a fallback position that you can go to that I guess it kind of is a little bit comparable to being on like an NFL practice squad. So there's that, which I don't think that's going to make a major impact on the college game. The thing to watch, though, is next year the XFL starts, and I don't believe the XFL has announced what its eligibility rules are going to be. So if the XFL launches next year and says, we're going to let you come out and play with 2 years of college experience, and they, the equivalent of the USFL move would be for them to do that and sign Trevor Lawrence next year or something like that. That would be the real game changer. That's what I would be watching for.
Well, and we've seen, if the XFL were to do that, we've seen players in basketball, high school players, go to like China or overseas for a year to not have to go to college. So they will. We've seen young players make that kind of move for the right amount of money. If we saw, remember Tamarick Vanover from Florida State left for the CFL after his freshman year, if I recall, and that's not really an option for players. I don't know why. They don't view it as something that is something they'd want to do. There is a rumor out there that Adidas was going to offer a bunch of money to Trevor Lawrence just to sit out and be a spokesman for a couple of years and do, I don't know, train or whatever. So there's the XFL. It seems like the AAF is missing an opportunity here, but also remember they're intertwined with the NFL a bit. So they're not necessarily going to do anything the NFL would be like completely against, whereas the XFL maybe not as in tune with the NFL. Maybe it would seem to me, Tom, that would be the easiest way to get more eyes. Because when I'm watching the AAF, and I'm seeing some quarterbacks. I don't know who they were, like this Perez kid out of, who, I don't even know what team he was playing for, but if you're more familiar with the players, and this is an opportunity for like J.K. Dobbins to leave and go to the XFL. A lot of people know who J.K. Dobbins is, and now he can go play in the XFL for a year before heading to the NFL. Even if they just made it a 2-year thing or, a 1-year thing out of, past high school, if they can undercut that time frame, I think that would be huge for the XFL.
Yeah, that is, I think, the opportunity for them, because otherwise you're just another spin-off professional league, which, the first time they tried like crazy new rules, and that was interesting for about a week and a half, and then everyone stopped watching. So yeah, that's the opportunity, and you just have to be, we could do a whole podcast on the USFL. Did you watch the USFL? Do you remember the USFL? Did you have a USFL team?
I did not have cable back in the day, so I did not watch the USFL.
I did not have the cable either, but we got New Jersey Generals games where I lived, so I don't know.
Yeah, I lived in Henry County, Ohio.
Okay, well,
there was nothing for us.
Was there a team in Leipzig or Napoleon? No, not. I can't remember for sure. They had some teams in weird cities, but
not that weird.
There's a whole podcast to do on the USFL and lessons you could learn from the USFL. That is a really interesting league, which is, I don't know, it seems like it's starting to come back, just like the nostalgia for it or whatever. But yeah, that was my jam way back in the day. Doug Flutie and Herschel Walker and the New Jersey Generals. So next one from @Aaron J. Wenzel. How many Ben Mason fullback dives will it take for the Michigan hashtag speed in space to switch to hashtag lost in space?
So this speed in space, I guess, is the new hashtag for, is it Josh Gaddis, the new offensive coordinator at Michigan? It's a far cry from a few years back when their wide receiver coach under Brady Hoke said speed is overrated, and this is your wide receivers coach saying that. So I'm glad that Michigan is moving into modern football. It's too bad that Greg Madison wasn't there to see it. Speed in space, fine. They've got a lot of skill guys. They have fewer than they did a month ago, but you can't talk about speed in space and, like this guy says, like Aaron says, hand the ball off to Ben Mason or go out there with 3 tight ends, because as we said last year, going into that game, the entire week of shows that we did, every time the ball goes to Ben Mason or there's 3 tight ends or even 2 tight ends out there, that's a win for the Ohio State defense, because they don't struggle necessarily against what Michigan does. They struggle against the three receivers and spreading them out and hitting them with a one back and speed, and just, Michigan, as we said the entire week, if Ohio State's going to win, it's because Michigan just does what Michigan does, and that sets up perfectly for Ohio State. So I'm glad to see Michigan talking about change. I will believe that change when Jim Harbaugh allows it to happen, though.
So basically, the Jim Harbaugh Michigan program will finally start to thrive when it stops looking like a Jim Harbaugh program or a Michigan program. Is that basically the short version of that answer?
That is basically summed up perfectly, with a nice blue sun and blue bow.
Next one, actually, also from @Aaron J. Wenzel. Urban was super intense and Day seems more low key. Have you picked up on if the vibe and atmosphere around the program has changed at all to reflect this?
Answer this, because I want to hear your take on this, because I have my own.
I think that there is probably something to that, with Day not necessarily being as intense as Urban, but I think that the general vibe around the program, especially this time of year, comes from Mick Marotti, and I don't think that I've ever gotten the sense there's a shortage of intensity with Mick Marotti. And if you watch those Matt Drills videos that they've put out, you've got the assistant coaches. I mean, Greg Stidwara is like screaming in the video, and Jeff Hafley, the new co-defensive coordinator, talked last Wednesday about the fact that he watched it. He's never seen anything like it. He said he got chills watching it. Like it was just crazy and intense. And so there will probably be a slightly different feel around some areas of the program, but what's come out so far, I don't think there's any reason to think that it's going to be a significant shift.
Yeah, I think the players, they've all said how much, and the recruits too, how much they like Ryan Day and how personable he is and how familial he is. And for me, the intensity, there's just different styles of high intensity. Urban had talked about how he would rehearse what he would say before games to his players. And when you watch the videos, you can tell it's rehearsed, and sometimes it even seemed forced. I think with Ryan Day, there's probably going to be less of that. I'm thinking he's more Dabo kind of than Urban, even though he's Urban, he's learned it from Urban, and everything that he's taking from Urban will be well used. I think there's just a different style of intensity. I don't know, levels, everybody's going to be intense. And like you said, this time of year, you don't let up because Mick Marotti's in charge. And when we're talking to the incoming freshmen last week, and they're like, they're being asked, how long did it take before you were no longer a recruit? And they're like, day one. That's when it begins, that first workout. You're no longer the 4-star, the 5-star kid that they're dying to get. Now that they've got you, you're here. And one of the best lines, Ronnie Hickman, he's still recovering from a knee injury, I believe. So, he was like, they're like, is it too bad that you can't go 100% right now? He's like, yeah, I can't go 100%, but rehab, they're going 100% on me, so it's like, yeah, I may not be able to do everything, but they're able to do everything on me. And so it's not even easy, for the guys who can't go full. They're still working plenty, and Mickey Marotti is the heart and soul of the team, of the program rather, and he's not gone anywhere. His intensity hasn't died down, and when he hands over the whistle to Ryan Day, it's going to be, it'll be Ryan Day's program. It'll still be intense. I just think it's going to be a different kind of intensity, maybe moved left or right, not up or down.
Next one from longtime Buckeyes fan. Does a Big Ten title get Ryan Day OSU's first Big Ten Coach of the Year in 4 decades? I think no, because if he does it this year, he's doing it with Urban Meyer's players, so it doesn't count, right? I mean, because that's you're coasting off of Urban Meyer's players, right?
Yeah,
Is that's going to be the takeaway?
Although I think Ryan Day is more likable to voters than Urban Meyer. So that, because Urban Meyer not winning it in 2012 is still ridiculous, or any of those years, it's ridiculous. I think Luke Fickell would have won it in 2011 had they gone 10-2, 11-1, something there. 11-1, not 10-2. But I think he had the best opportunity simply because of expectations. The expectations are still going to be very high under Ryan Day. I think voters like him or don't dislike him as much as they did Urban, but I'll still be surprised to see it.
Next one from Carpe Remote. Does the Big Ten discourage aggressive play? I saw the offensive line twice flagged for pancakes and the defense flagged for driving the quarterback into the ground. The exact same plays we see over and over in the AAC and SEC. I think he meant ACC. I think I'd love to see us coach to play as aggressively as Clemson, but we'd probably spend the game walking backward.
I don't want to see Ohio State coached to play like Clemson because I don't want them putting their fingers in places where they don't belong.
And some of the consumption of substances within
Correct.
the Clemson program, which whoopsie-daisers might have been accidentally everyone, huh? Yeah. So yeah.
Now you know why they're more aggressive.
It's like an aggression combined with like a rage. I don't know. I don't want to. As far as the officiating goes, I think every conference thinks that their officials are the worst. I mean, it's kind of like how every state thinks their drivers are the worst. Like, you can't possibly all have the worst officials. You can't possibly all have the worst drivers. But if you look, like hashtag SEC refs or hashtag ACC refs or hashtag Pac-12 refs, those are all things on Twitter because everyone thinks that their officials are uniquely terrible. And that, I mean, they can't all be true. The truth is Pac-12 refs are the worst and Massachusetts drivers are the worst. Those are the facts, and they are not in dispute. So there are certainly ways that the Big Ten disadvantages its schools. I don't think officiating is one of them necessarily. I mean, if I was going to gripe about anything about the Big Ten hosing its own schools, I would say scheduling is something to gripe about before you talk about officiating.
Yeah, and one thing you do have to give the officials credit for, they know how to spot a football.
I literally cannot remember one time when I've had a serious quibble with any kind of spotting of a football. You're right. I had not thought about it, but now that you mention it, you're right. I can't think of one time when it's been even remotely controversial.
Very, very talented.
Next one from everyone's least favorite listener, Langdon Alger. Which freshman are you most looking forward to seeing this spring? Do you want to take this one, since I'm sure Langdon meant it for you? Since you are definitely not Langdon Alger.
And it's such a simple question because the answer is probably the same for 90% of people. But the reason Langdon is probably asking this question is, well, the answer for me, it's Garrett Wilson and it's Zach Harrison. And the reasons are because these guys are supreme athletes who perform very well on the field. But one of the things that Ryan Day said about Garrett Wilson is that this is going to be his first opportunity to focus really just on football. And we've seen what he can do spread thin through high school sports. And now he's going to just be a football player. And he's got a depth chart that is favorable for what he does in the position he will likely play at Z. At least there's the most proven player at his position is Chris Olave. So there's an opportunity there. Zach Harrison, it's been interesting to see the comments from Day and Greg Madison and Al Washington, because we know how much potential he has, but for them to talk about how they're already seeing that potential, because we know he's raw, and even Zach Harrison is talking about how much more flexible he has gotten in this last month, and we know how much stretching and flexibility, how much Nick Bosa and Joey Bosa focused on that. And when you've got Zach Harrison, it's almost like he's already starting to blossom. He's this great athlete, but now they're teaching him the ways of the force, basically, and they're able to maneuver this athleticism in ways that it will help him on the football field. So I want to see that growth on the field this season. That's why for me it's those two, just to see how they, as I said, blossom and how they put their newfound football focus to use on the field. What about you?
Unsurprisingly, those are the two answers I had as well. The only addition I had was, since Langdon didn't specify true freshman or redshirt freshman, I'm also pretty excited to see Nicholas Petit-Frere this spring, because he came in last year as one of the top 10 recruits in the nation, regardless of position, and your freshman year at offensive line is almost basically a write-off for almost everybody. But this year, he has a legitimate chance to win the starting right tackle job. It's either probably going to be him or Josh Allaby. So one or the other. He has a chance to get on the field early. He has all the measurables. He has the quickness. He has, if you watch his film from high school, he was going up and catching touchdown passes. I mean, he is a uniquely talented athlete at the tackle position. It's a lot like Zach Harrison in a lot of ways, where it's, even if it's a little raw, it's going to be real interesting to watch. So, yeah, in addition to Garrett Wilson and Zach Harrison, I would put Nick Petit-Frere on that list as well.
If we can go with redshirt freshman, I'll also throw Cameron Babb in there. So that's all.
Yep, that's a good one too. And what have they actually said where he's going to play? Are they slotting him at X or Z? Have you heard a definitive answer on that?
I will assume Z. Just there's no room at X, and he's more along the lines of a Z. But I also wouldn't be surprised to see any of these guys at Z also running around in the slot too, just because they can do what KJ Hill does, they can do what CJ Saunders does. I think there's going to be a lot of different ways to utilize all of them, but I expect he and Garrett Wilson will be battling it out, I think, for to back up Chris Olave. Does that mean they're going to be, in that starting six? That's something to watch for sure.
Yeah, and just if you don't remember, Cameron Babb came in last year and then blew out his knee at some point. I think after it might have been after spring ball. It was like during spring or during summer workouts, because that was one of the top 3 stories that broke during Big Ten Media Days in Chicago last year. So I don't remember what the other 2 were, but the Cameron Babb knee injury was one that came out while we were out there. So, all right, next one from @Zadaya. Which Buckeye football player would play Thursday for the basketball Bucks if they were allowed?
Well, Rashad Berry was a very good basketball player, so that was my first thought, and then I immediately go back to Zach Harrison and Garrett Wilson. I don't know what kind of basketball player Zach Harrison is, but I would let him run down the court and I would just throw him alley-oops, like fast break, half court offense. I don't care. I would just, we could be setting up, like we'll have 15 seconds on the clock. We're setting up just dribbling the ball around in half court offense. I would send Zach Harrison, go into the backcourt and just get a running start, right? And just come tearing through on the wing, and I'll throw you an alley-oop. Nobody's going to get in your way. You're a monster. I'll just, and basically you just have an alley-oop offense and you just throw it to him and he just dunks it down. Garrett Wilson, I assume he's good at everything. So that's another guy I would put in there.
Yeah, those are 2 of the 3 names I had. I like the fact that you put these 2 questions back to back in the rundown, because my answers for both of the last question and this question were exactly the same. Garrett Wilson, Zach Harrison, Nicholas Petit-Frere. They need
lazy.
The Buckeyes need a big body, right? I mean, you want someone back there with Caleb Wesson. I would not mind seeing Nicholas Petit-Frere in the paint and seeing what he can do down there. If we're going to be really pedantic, and we have been all show, or I guess I have been all show. He didn't actually say when, so I guess the real answer is Ricky Dudley. Next question.
I would put Noah Potter in there. Your brother left us. This is medieval basketball rules. Yeah, medieval basketball rules. You have to take over for your brother, and here now you have to marry his wife, and you have to take care of his family. So that would be the most rightful thing that would have happened there. So yeah, that's my answer.
All right, last one from @DaveGrot87. why do you think Larry Johnson was promoted to only associate head coach and not also as a defensive coordinator?
Why do you think, Tom? Because the way I view it is I think he would welcome the opportunity to be a defensive coordinator. But when these coaches talk about being selfless and having no egos, Greg Studrawa said that, and he's not the only one. They've all talked about that. I don't think he has an ego. I think it hurt not being considered more at Penn State to take over for Joe Paterno. But now I don't see him as, I think he's very happy doing what he's doing. And it's not like it's less work not being a coordinator, because everybody coordinates. That was one of the things that we've heard in the past is, there's 4 coordinators in there at a time, basically, and he can give you everything you need and in any way you want it. I just don't think that's no longer part of his bucket list or his checklist. He's talked about how he loves molding raw defensive linemen. And I think to be able to concentrate on that is totally fine with him.
Yeah, I don't think he's angling for a new job at this point. I think Noah Potter said Larry Johnson had told him he planned to be there for Noah Potter's whole career, so that's at least 4 years. But I don't think Larry Johnson has a 10-year plan or a 15-year plan that ends anywhere other than a beach somewhere. So when Paterno left, that was 8 years ago. So
yeah,
his head coaching aspirations 8 years ago, he's at a different point in his career now. So from his perspective, I don't know that there's the same, urge to climb the ladder. Madison's a little different because Madison has actually done it before. Mm-hmm. Madison just wanted to do it again. And from Ohio State's perspective, it makes sense to pair Jeff Hafley with Greg Madison, because then you have the young, energetic guy who's doing it for the first time paired with the old veteran, guy who has been the defensive coordinator at the college level before. That doesn't necessarily work if it's Larry Johnson, because Larry Johnson hasn't done that job before. So that's why Madison made more sense in that role than Larry Johnson would have. So, I think Larry Johnson is very happy doing what he's doing, and Ohio State is getting a fantastic ROI on Larry Johnson's contract every year, and Larry Johnson is just churning out fantastic defensive linemen every single year. And you look at the pipeline since he's been there, to go from Joey Bosa to Nick Bosa to Chase Young to Zach Harrison to Jack Sawyer. That is just a string of 5-star talent, and that doesn't even include guys like Jonathan Cooper. That's a string of talent that most any program outside of maybe Clemson and Alabama would kill for. And so he gets to work with that, and he has carved himself a nice little niche, and he is extremely, extremely appreciated both within the walls of the Woody Hayes Athletic Center and also, I think, by the fan base on the whole. And that's a pretty good gig.
It is. But now what happens if in 1 year Larry Johnson is like, hey, Noah, have you heard about this XFL?
Oh boy, everything the XFL. Vince McMahon ruins everything.
All right. So I think that's going to do it for us this week. Want to thank everybody for listening. Tom, did you have any closing comments? Good.
No, I don't think so. Other than, please, if you enjoy listening to the podcast, please take time to rate and review us on iTunes. We greatly appreciate that. We sent out a whole bunch of books about a week ago, and we'll probably do that again in the next few weeks. So if you do rate and review us, just DM me or Gerd a screenshot of the review, and we'll enter you for a drawing to win. I don't know, books or programs or something. We both have just piles of crap from Ohio State football that you'll enjoy, and our wives will enjoy having out of the house. So it'll be win-win for everyone. So if you do not subscribe, make sure you subscribe to the podcast as well on iTunes or your podcast platform of choice. You will get it a lot quicker that way if you wait for the podcast post that goes up on the front page of the Ozone. That's generally at least 12-ish hours after the podcast goes live. So you are costing yourself a terrible Columbus morning winter commute with listening to us by failing to subscribe. So give yourself 12-hour head start on the podcast by subscribing.
And Tom, I still have not had any takers on any of my 1995 Michigan game programs. So I'll put this out there again. If anybody would like one, I could send it to you. If this is the one missing from your collection from the Cooper era, it's pretty key. You need this to complete it. It's like National Treasure, the George Washington presidential button things, the campaign buttons. This is like that. So if this is the one that's missing from your collection, I've got you. So just let me know, email me, respond any way you can, because I know this is something that you have been looking for, and I've got it. So thank you all for listening. Make sure to check out the rest of the stuff at theozone.net. We're cranking out stuff every day for you. For you. It's not for us. I mean, we're reading it as we write it. We don't need to post it. You know, we just read it. So we're putting it out there for you. So please check it out. And we will talk to you next week.